morning and welcome to the Ventura Center for Spiritual Living. I'm Reverend Bonnie Rose, and it's great to see all of you here this morning. But we also have another great musician with us today, and that would be Reverend Kusala, who's going to play the ukulele for us. So many of us have heard him speak before, and he always requests that I don't give him any gigantic introduction. So let's just show him lots of love as we welcome to the stage our beautiful, wonderful Reverend Kusala Bhikshu.
I'm going to be going over here in a second to play my ukulele. You know, it's a song that I've been working on for a couple months. I find as I get older, it takes a couple months to get the stuff in my head, and then a couple months to get the stuff out of my head. And so I'm just about there, and I wanted to sing this. Last time I sang here, I sang a song called Jesus Doesn't Want Me and the Devil, He Don't Care. And it went over pretty well, you know. So this is like the other side of the coin, and this is He Did Trouble Me. This is a song, a gospel song, an old gospel song. And then I'll get into my talk. So I brought my big ukulele today. If I turn my head so I could not see, my Lord did trouble me. If I let things stand that should not be, my Lord did trouble me. If I held my head too high, too proud, my Lord did trouble me. If I raised my voice a little too loud, my Lord did trouble me, did trouble me. With a word or sign, with the ringing of a bell in the back of my mind, did trouble me, did stir my soul, for to make me human, to make me whole. If I slept too long and I slept too deep, put a worrisome vision into my sleep. If I held myself away and apart, and the tears of my brother didn't move my heart, did trouble me with a word or sign, with the ringing of a bell in the back of my mind, did trouble me, did stir my soul, for to make me human, to make me whole. Of this I'm sure, of this I know, my Lord will trouble me. Whatever I do, wherever I go, my Lord will trouble me. In the whisper of the wind, in the rhythm of a song, my Lord will trouble me. To keep me on the path where I belong, my Lord will trouble me, will trouble me. With a word or sign, with the ringing of a bell in the back of my mind, will trouble me, will stir my soul, for to make me human, to make me whole. Thank you. This is about compassion, and where does it come from? In April of 2013, next year, the Buddhists and Catholics of Los Angeles will come together at Loyola Marymount University. And the topic of the conference will be, where does compassion come from for a Catholic? And where does compassion come from a Buddhist? And the Buddhist perspective is a bit different. We don't look outside very often. Because when a Buddhist looks outside, what they see is suffering, old age, sickness, and death. And it's sort of a bummer. And when we start to look inside, what we find is love, generosity, compassion, and wisdom. And if we're looking for compassion, we may be surprised to find that it starts with being nobody. We are required to transcend self. And we have a technique and a practice to do that. The first thing we need to do is we need to practice the 5 precepts. We need to practice not taking life. First step in compassion. We need to practice not taking what is not given. Second step in compassion. We need to practice not indulging in sexual misconduct. The third practice of compassion. We need to practice skillful speech. The fourth. And the fifth one is we need to practice not consuming intoxicants, because it might lead us to forget we need to practice compassion. In practicing these 5 precepts, what we're doing is transforming the way we speak and the way we act. We're becoming more skillful. We're reducing suffering in our life, and we're reducing suffering in the lives of others. But that's just the beginning. The hardest part is changing how we think. The hardest part is changing our mind. There are 44 different Buddhist techniques on meditation, how to cultivate mind. And one of the categories is called tranquility meditation, samatha meditation. It's designed to bring you to a place of happiness and peace, inside, not outside. And we start with a concentration technique. And the one I use is simply watching my breath, feeling that breath going out and coming in, going out and coming in. What I notice about my breath is that it's ever changing. Sometimes I have short breaths, sometimes long. Sometimes my breath seems to almost disappear for a while. And then it comes back with a vengeance. And in understanding how my breath works, I understand how I lack control in my life. That I have the opportunity to control my breath up to a point. And I have the opportunity to control my life up to a point. And in understanding that, it allows me to rest in the sensation of breath, which is always happening right now. It's my doorway into the present moment experience of my life. How am I doing in this moment? How's it going? And this discursive thought in the background allows me to settle into the rhythms of mind and body as they interact with each other. As the body becomes more relaxed and more balanced, the mind becomes more clear and more alert. Just the opposite of what we'd expect. And as we become clear and alert in mind, we can find 5 aspects of the first level of tranquility: applied thought, sustained thought, happiness, bliss, and equanimity. And those 5 characteristics arise spontaneously because of concentration. That's called the first jhana, J-H-A-N-A. The second jhana has 3 characteristics. We've gotten rid of applied thought and sustained thought. We've been practicing so long now, so many days and months and years, that our mind simply rests on the object of meditation. So we no longer need to willfully keep it connected to our breath. We have a stronger sense of happiness, a stronger sense of bliss or pleasure, and a stronger sense of balance and equanimity. Buddhism is a path of renunciation. We never gain anything from our Buddhist practice. We simply give up what is not useful, like lust, greed, hatred, and delusion. With a stronger sense of mental happiness and a stronger sense of physical pleasure and bliss, and the beginning of equanimity, we understand as a Buddhist that to get any further in this practice, we're going to have to give something else up. And the choice is happiness, pleasure, or equanimity. Now, some might choose equanimity because it's not as much fun as happiness and pleasure. But the Buddhist meditator would say, I am going to give up my attachment to physical pleasure because it feels great, but it won't let me go. It requires me to keep repeating whatever it is to get more and more pleasure. And I find that physical pleasure agitates my mind. It's like throwing a large rock into a quiet forest pond. It creates ripples on the surface. And I find that my physical pleasure creates the ripples on the surface of my consciousness. It agitates me. It doesn't allow me to find true peace. So with renewed effort and a deeper understanding, the meditator will let go of their attachment to pleasure, physical pleasure, while at the same time letting go of their aversion to physical pain. Now, most of us would probably like to do that if we could. And if you meditate at all, you understand that physical pain is always just right around the corner. Crossing your legs in the wrong way, sitting uncomfortably erect without a backrest. Sometimes the blood stops and the tingles start and the back feels like there's such a heavy burden on the shoulders that it can't keep the head raised much longer. And we think to ourselves, well, maybe if I don't move my leg and don't move my ankle, it'll go away. And it just seems to get stronger and stronger and stronger. And then we remember that we still have our cell phone, and 911 isn't that far away. And if I'm unable to walk away from the Zendo, I can get the paramedics to put me on the stretcher and take me out. And what we start to see is as we meditate and we come to this quiet place inside, there is a lot to fear. There is a lot to fear. This world is a really scary place. And at any moment, our life can change for the better or for the worse. 2 weeks ago, I was in Huntington Beach with an interfaith group. And we were sitting on the beach 2:30 in the afternoon on Sunday. And they had this sort of trailer thing set up, and we had chairs. And to be honest with you, the clergy were the only ones wearing clothes. And I noticed how distracted my mind became. and realized there was much happiness and pleasure arising in mind and body, but no peace whatsoever. So I saw the advantage of dressing like this, clearly. And I realized dressing like this really prevented me from going to the beach because I didn't fit in. But I didn't have to worry about sunburns either. I did notice there were a lot of sort of elderly people like myself. You know, I'm 63 now and thinking about life in a different way. And I saw some other folks who were in their 60s and 70s, and they were sort of thinking about life in a different way too. And what I noticed is there was sort of a consistency in what they wore. They had really cool cargo shorts with a lot of pockets and sandals and oftentimes flowered shirts and a lot of hair. And I'm wondering, how did they have all that hair? And they were being really cool. It was like they were like 25 and they were all at the beach and they were checking out the girls too, and you know? And I'm going, wow. And then I realized that it must be really scary to reach that time in your life when you get to retire and not have to work quite as hard as you used to and not be really sure about the future. And if the future was going to be able to support you, even if you did have a pension and health care and Social Security and all those things we sort of hope will happen and used to take for granted. Man, and there they were. And so under all this happiness and joy of being at the beach, I had the sense that there was a little bit of fear as well, that how long would this last? And if they needed to, could they downsize their lifestyle to fit in with their support? I don't know. But as I meditate and come to that place in the present moment, man, it's nice not to have a future, and it's nice not to have a past. It's nice just to be here now, as Ram Dass might say. Because the building's not on fire, it's sort of cool here, it's comfortable, you all get to sit down, I get to pace a little bit. You know, I mean, this is a nice moment. And this moment can go to the next and to the next and to the next. So as we sit in our meditation practice and let go of our attachment to pleasure and our aversion to pain, we want an even better moment. And now we're faced with the dilemma of what do we let go of next? Happiness or equanimity? And the Buddhist meditator would say, I'm going to let go of happiness because my attachment to happiness prevents me from having peace. In the way pleasure was like throwing a rock into the quiet pond of the forest, happiness is like throwing a pebble into the quiet pond of the forest. There's just this little riplet that just travels, but that disturbs the peace of the water. And if I let go of my attachment to happiness, can I let go of my aversion to sadness? Can I just be with what is, whether it be happy or sad? And can I experience it fully without denying anything, without turning away from it? Realizing, because of my meditation practice, that everything only exists for a short period of time. The happiness arises, it exists, and it falls away. Sadness arises, exists, and falls away. It calls me to practice patience with the happiness and the sadness, realizing that everything is in a constant state of flux and change. So with renewed effort and a deeper understanding of pleasure and happiness, pain and sadness, I now find myself in the fourth jhana, the deepest level of tranquility and happiness and peace. And now I'm right in the middle. I'm not attached. I don't have aversion. I'm right in the middle. I'm not clinging to anything. I'm sort of balancing like on a surfboard, and I'm just surfing down that equanimity. And what I start to see now is that I no longer exist separately from everything or everyone else. That I have always been, whether I knew it or not, interconnected and interdependent with all the humans, with all the animals, with all the devas, the angels, the celestial beings. They do exist, and dogs do go to heaven. And in that moment of interconnectedness and interdependence, what the little talk and presentation shared with us was, we don't go to the top of the mountain. Our heart breaks, never to mend again. And why is that the case? Because we see clearly that every human who is suffering is us. And we look at those faces out there, and if you're a Christian, you might see Jesus, but if you're a Buddhist, you just see you. Over and over and over again. All those chronic patients with illnesses that can't be cured, that's you. The homeless looking for shelter, that's you. The hungry looking for food, that's you. You'll never be able to rest again. There's no place to go where no one is suffering. And in trying to find that place where no one is suffering, you simply find more suffering. And the Buddhist would say, yes, that's exactly what the Buddha said would happen. But now I have to prepare myself to go out and look at the suffering faces, even at Huntington Beach, and accept that as my new reality. Now the bodhicitta arises at that moment. The bodhicitta is the mind of enlightenment. The mind of enlightenment does not end your suffering. The mind of enlightenment does not end future rebirths. The mind of enlightenment simply allows you to see the interconnectedness and interdependence of all phenomena. In order to end suffering and end all future rebirths, you need nirvana. You need to be an arahant. You need to be someone who wants to get rid of their suffering. The bodhisattva, on the other hand, accepts the challenge of inviting the suffering of others into their life so they can be of service. But the kind of service we're talking about for the bodhisattva is not necessarily ending everyone's suffering, because we have 7 billion people, just humans, who are suffering, and countless dogs and cats and fish and birds who can't find enough to eat. They're suffering too. You know, I was given this movie called Genesis, put together by a Japanese filmmaker. It was recommended to me. It has nothing to do with the Bible. It has something to do with the evolution of life on Earth. And I thought, well, this might be interesting, so I picked an evening where I didn't have much to do. I had already checked my email. I sort of settled into watching this CD, and what I noticed, first of all, it was very colorful, the way the Earth used to be, covered with water, and then we had volcanoes and lava flowing, and finally we had peaks just pushing through the oceans, and then we had land, and as the story unfolded, what we had are the first creatures that came on this land. And I was surprised what they did. The first thing they did was kill something, because they were hungry. Now, the first creatures didn't have a lot of creatures to pick from, so they might have been vegetarian. So they killed the broccoli, the asparagus. And then the second thing they did was they had sex, so they could have more creatures. And then they were hungry, and they killed something else. And I thought about today in 2012. We're still killing and having sex. And most of us aren't eating broccoli. We're eating giant, complicated things that walk the earth. That seems to be part of our human legacy, if you will, that we're designed to kill and have sex. And it's fine until you get 7 billion people. And then there's less and less to kill and less reason to have sex. So as we come to this place of peace and equanimity, as our desires fall away, as our heart breaks, as we see the value of life, as we see the value of abstinence, as we see the value of not taking what is not given, those 5 precepts are no longer practiced. They are lived. It's what awakened people do. They don't do those things. Buddhism is about not doing stuff. The thing that separates the monk from the layperson is the stuff the monk doesn't get to do. That's the only difference. So, can we live with a broken heart? Can we live in the fear of the future and the regrets of the past? Can we bring our life into the present moment? Can we see everything we ever have thought about our life is simply this story that we write? And we're in charge. And Buddhism says, even though we can't change the world in any real way, somebody said one time, it's really hard to cover the whole world in leather. It's a lot easier to buy a pair of shoes. Those are nice shoes, by the way. Can we change our life? Can we change the way we experience our life? Can we change the way we experience others? And the Buddha would say, yes, you can. And that is the practice I teach. Your refuge is changing the way you experience the world around you. You can make it any way you want to, as long as you have enough courage and time and know why it might be important. And when you've had that direct experience, that bodhicitta experience, and you really don't even need to meditate to do that. You could just be walking on the beach at sunset and feel the sand between your toes and the lapping of the waves against the shore, and that could be your epiphany moment. And it's just sort of transcendent, and you no longer exist independently. The whole universe has welcomed you home. There you are. And then your buddy, your friend says, let's go get a beer, and there it goes. So the idea of meditation is you have a controlled environment, you have a couple expectations that never turn out the way they're supposed to, and then there's a moment of transcendence, and then there is a moment of knowing who you are. And the Buddhists would say, in knowing who you are, it allows to see you what you aren't. You're none of the things you ever thought you were. You're none of the things that anybody ever thought you were. You're manifesting moment by moment because of a million different conditions surrounding you all the time. There's nothing to defend. There's a lot to do, though, because now you've seen the truth. You've seen the truth, and nobody can ever tell you differently. And that means you're going to start volunteering. You're going to start sending your checks to those people who say, hey, we need to save a few more dogs and cats. Can you send me $10? You're going to be first in line. Might even send them 12. You might even be down at the food banks helping give the people who don't eat enough more to eat. And you might say, why am I doing this? What the heck happened to me? My life was really good before. I had a nice house and family and friends. And now I'm in all these places that I never thought I'd be. And there's no immediate gratification because nobody ever gets better immediately. No situation ever changes forever immediately. There's just more and more and more to do, and somehow you hear the call, and you're up there first in line, and you're doing more and more, and now you're getting like really tired, and people say, let's go out and party tonight. You say, no, I got to sleep because I'm up early tomorrow. I got more people to feed. And then your body starts to get old, and your mind starts to, and then you take sort of those last few breaths of your life, and you say to yourself, hey, this is cool. This life meant something. And I'm going to read just a couple paragraphs. You may have heard this song before. Daniel Nahmod, does that ring a bell? Okay, New Thought. It's a little different than New Age. He said, if this is my last song, if this is my final day, if tomorrow I'll be gone, what do I want to say? If this is my last song, if it's time for me to go, when my body's moved on, what will I have to show? No, not fortune or fame. They scatter to the wind. The things that make a name just don't matter in the end. Is this world a little more peaceful? The oceans and sky a little more blue? Is humankind a little bit wiser about the good that we can do? Does the sun shine a little bit brighter when before there was only rain? If so, then I'm glad I came. Thank you very much.